Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everyone here at the church and everyone online to our October Crucial Conversations. This month, we want to try something different. We're actually going to stream from the sanctuary, something a little bit different from us. So let's get into it, all right? Today, we gather not just for a discussion, but for accountability, for clarity, and for healing. This crucial conversation is one of the most urgent we've had because it deals with the soul of our community, our children. And we are living in a time where trust in systems, in schools, even in hope itself is wearing thin. Let's take a moment to reflect on how we got here. Our ancestors built schools under the threat of death. Black teachers taught lessons in church basements by candlelight. Black parents pushed for Brown versus the Board of Education, believing that desegregation would mean equal opportunity, but were met with closed doors, underfunded programs, and systems that still don't serve our kids. So let's fast forward, and we now face an educational system where equity promised, but is rarely delivered. Our children are disproportionately disciplined. Our culture is being erased from textbooks. Our families are left out of the decision-making process. Our teachers are under-supported and over-policed, and trust has turned into trauma. Many of us in this room today either had to navigate a system that didn't believe in us, or we are raising children who are struggling to survive in one. So when we talk about the school-to-prison pipeline, we're not just talking about theory. We are talking about a system that criminalizes Black identity and neglects Black potential. We're talking about the disconnect between community and curriculum, between our lived experience and what's being taught and what's being left out. And we are here today because we still believe in the power of truth, transformation, and community-led solutions. This is not a conversation about blame. This is a conversation about building, about restoring, about reclaiming our children's futures. So let's take a look at some of the stats and data that got us here today. Black students are 3.2 times more likely than white students to be suspended or expelled. In many systems, Black students are only 16% of enrollment, but account for 27% of law enforcement referrals and 31% of school-related arrests. Once a child experiences suspension between grades 7 and 12, their likelihood of being incarcerated as a young adult, it rises dramatically. One study showed those suspended had up to 9.78 times greater odds of incarceration than peers who were never suspended. Nationally, Black youth are 5 to 6 times more likely placed in juvenile facilities than white youth. Schools across the U.S. are increasingly turning to law enforcement for everyday discipline, making arrests for nonviolent infractions, bypassing educational responses. Implicit bias plays a very powerful role. Teachers, often unconsciously, monitor and discipline Black children more strictly, even when behaviors are similar across multiple races. These are not random numbers. They are the story of opportunity denied and hope arrested. So how do we change this? Here's what we must do. We must listen deeply, not only to data, but to stories in our pews, our homes, and our neighborhoods. Challenge policies. Ask tough questions to school boards, district leaders, teachers, and legislators. We must elevate our voices. When students speak, we lean in. When parents speak, we pave the way to give them space to be heard. Where faith into action. Let's meet the academic, emotional, and spiritual needs of our children. We must all stand together as a church, as a village, and as guardians of our children's futures. And now, let me introduce these beautiful ladies to my right. All right? First, we have Miss Danielle Green Bell. She's the Chief Engagement Officer at Richmond Public Schools. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and your educational background.
Absolutely, thank you. As already stated, my name is Danielle Greenbell. I started out in Richmond Public Schools, ended up graduating from Henrico High School, got my Bachelor of Arts from the College of William & Mary in English and History with a concentration in linguistics, my Master of Teaching from VCU before I then became a middle school teacher. I taught at Benford, which is now Dogwood, Lucille Brown, as well as Bouchal. Taught for 5 years, left there, went to go get my doctorate from Stanford University in California. And then after a small period working in artificial intelligence, I've returned back to Richmond Public Schools to work in the Chief Engagement Office role. For a lot of people, I get asked, what does the Chief Engagement Officer do? We have 4 main areas, and I'll make it very quick. One is advocacy and outreach. So we do a lot of our political lobbying on behalf of with the General Assembly, as well as anything related to community partnerships and volunteering. We have family and community engagement, which a big part of that is making sure our students are coming into school to reduce chronic absenteeism. The third section of that is communications. So we work with RPS Direct, with the media, the news, all of the newspapers to make sure everyone knows all of the wonderful things that our students are doing. And last, we have the Center for Families in Transition, where we work with all of our students who are experiencing housing instability. So whether they're in foster care or they're unhoused, they're homeless, we make sure that they have all of the necessities in order to continue coming back to school. So a little bit about me.
Oh, well, thank you, and thank you for being here. Next, we have our very own Miss Mariah White. You can tell us a little bit of yourself and your background as always being a warrior.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Mariah White. I am the former school board for the 2nd District. I'm also a member here at Trinity. I've been here at Trinity since I was 13. Used to sit up there. Now I'm down here on the 5th row, pretty much. I have 2 children that are in RPS. I've went to several of the schools in Richmond Public Schools, almost all of them. I have been to John Marshall. I went to Kennedy for 1 month. I went to TJ and I graduated in '83, a year earlier. Then I went on to Reynolds. From there, I got a degree in fashion merchandise and a minor in marketing. Transferred to VCU and got a degree in sports management. From there, I got a master's from Strayer in supply management. Then I was contemplating on what was I going to do with all of this, and I wanted to run for a seat, and I had to determine what is my passion, what is my hobby. My hobby is children. And I know Dr. Bell over here because when I was on the board approved her and we hired her. I also have 2 children that I was a foster parent that I adopted. And as I got involved in their education, I felt that I needed to do more for the city of Richmond. And that's why I ran for my election. Also, before I ran for my election, I went back to school and got another master's, and that was in curriculum and instruction. I did also in the military for 26 years. I retired in 2014 as an officer. I went halfway to get my doctor's there, and then I stopped. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to go back to school, but that's a little bit about me, and I'm real passionate about Richmond Public Schools. Because I'm living proof of Richmond Public Schools. And every day that I look at the kids and I go into the schools, because it hasn't changed for me. I didn't win my seat last year, but I still do the same things. I still show up for the school boards. So nothing is going to change for that. As long as I have children in Richmond Public Schools, and as long as I'm breathing, have breath in this body, I will be at Richmond Public Schools, protecting the kids of the city of Richmond. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. I thank you both for being here. Thank you both for your unwavering service to the city of Richmond and our students. So let's get into the panel conversation. Keep it real simple. I ask a few questions. Both of you or either of you can answer. I may add a little bit to it. At the end, if anyone in the audience has any questions, we have a mic set up. You can come forward and ask your questions, and the three of us will do our best to answer. All right, so y'all ready? All right. So let's get started. Part of our theme today is rebuilding the trust. So what does trust in education look like from the perspective of Black and underserved communities? So let's start with the question of what are the key factors that contribute to mistrust in today's public school system?
I'll take it, and I guess she'll go to the second. Well, I think the mistrust in the Richmond Public Schools is that parents just don't feel that no one is listening to them. Children feel that no one is listening to them. And we have to build that trust, and that's why I have been elected as the Richmond Crusaders for Voters, the chair of education, because that's one of my plans, is to build the trust, to go through the neighborhoods, talk to the parents, and bring them in to see what they need, not to tell them what we want them to do. These are their children. They have parent rights, and I like to know, what do they want? I've been in the classes, I've been in the schools, I've listened to the children. And sometimes when you go into the schools, we don't want to believe what our children said. Every teacher is not a good teacher, and I can tell you that. Every child may not be what we are looking for in our children. But for myself, like I tell every principal, there's no bad child. We just got to know what the issues are. And if we're not upfront and presentable to our children, listen to them what they're saying, and then react. Just don't go to the school reacting, cussing and fussing with teachers and administrators. Let's work together. And I think that is the biggest mistrust that we have here. And I'm so glad that Dr. Bell is here, because engagement is one of the other big things that is on my list as far as student achievement. No one wants to face what our Black students are going through with student achievement. Why are our Black children so low in student achievement? We have to find that out. And I will be working on that now, since I am the new elected education chair for the Crusaders for Voters.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations. So I think I want to piggyback off of something that Ms. White alluded to, where she mentioned that teachers and families feel like no one is listening. Aside from the historic breakdown and harms that have been done to Black children across generations, right? When we're thinking about the ways that we have always had to fight to even be in school. First, second, to have quality schools, quality educators, or educators that were given the same opportunities as other educators. So even putting aside the historic harms, there's still a present mistrust that exists. And a lot of that, going back to what Ms. White said, is due to the breakdown in communication. Emails that go potentially unanswered, phone calls that don't get returned, conversations where there's a lack of customer service, in that we show respect to our parents and families when they bring us concerns, or a tendency to blame families for the circumstances that they're going through. And so all of those things breed down when you put that historic space of mistrust. It then piggybacks off of that to create a present sense of mistrust. And so in engagement, some of the things that we're really thinking about in the area of family and community engagement, we knock on doors, we ask questions, we don't try to blame or operate from a space of blame. We try to understand from the core, what is the issue? How can we help? And what are the resources that we can offer you? Are we perfect? Absolutely not. But we are trying to really be culturally competent in the ways that historically the city has failed some of our Black students. And then how can we rebuild that trust, earn that trust back, because it's not owed to us, such that we can start having meaningful conversations with our families so that we can begin to close some of those gaps, and have people look to us as folks that really do care about their students, care enough that you can trust us with your kids every day.
All right, I like that. So the theme from both of you guys seems to be opening up the communication between student, parents, and the school. Makes good sense, so we need to make sure we're doing that. Second question is going to focus on zero tolerance policies and how they affect kids. Can you share how these practices disproportionately impact our black students and what type of alternative options exist?
So, it's okay if I hop back in? Yes. So one of the things that I'm really proud of with Richmond Public Schools is we do not operate under zero tolerance policies. We make sure that we are understanding the root cause. One of the things that this administration has done, every meeting, every year, the principals come in to meet with the administration 3 times a year. And we do principal goal setting. What are the goals that you have for your school and for your school community? And one of the major goals they have are circulate around suspensions, for instance. And so it's looking at how many students have you suspended, what proportion of your students' bodies have you suspended, and then how many of them are repeat suspensions. Because typically we find that we don't want to, it doesn't matter if you only have 2% of your school student body only being suspended, if you're continuing to suspend the same 5 students. What are we doing for those students, right? So zero tolerance policies, to get back to the question, are very harmful. They don't understand or try to understand what is the cause. For instance, I just had a conversation. We were at Richmond High School for the Arts this past week, and I said, let's get to the root cause when we see that our students are walking the hallway. They don't just walk the hallway because they like the calming effects of, the brick walls when they walk by, right? There is a reason why they're doing it. So rather than just jumping to, we should be placing them in our restorative rooms, which is our new term. We're trying to do better with our terminology and our spaces for in-school suspension, for instance. Why don't we survey some of our hall walkers? Why don't we understand, do you feel like classroom is boring? Do you feel like it's just worksheets? Do you feel like the teacher disrespected you? Is there something going on at home? When you move away from just addressing the symptom, which is often the misbehavior, and get to the root, then you find that you have students that don't walk the halls because we've solved for the actual problem. If you operate under zero tolerance policies, there is no solve for the actual problem. You just address the symptom, and you never actually root out the real issue. And so unless there's something that causes like immediate danger or harm to another student, or to the student themselves, we do our very best not to operate under zero tolerance policies.
And I'm going to piggyback on what she has said at first, because she's in RPS now and I'm off the board. So I'm going to put my solutions out there as the new chair for education for the Crusades for Voters. I know that there are high flyers in Richmond Public Schools. There are quite a few of them. And you have to go through a whole big process for this. You got to go through the BIPs, the behavior intervention. You have to build a case, seem like on a student, until you get enough information that you can transfer this child into an alternative school. I was on the board, and I recommend an alternative school for our younger students. We do have a lot of high flyers. People don't really want to believe this, but we do have kids from K through 5th grades that are in alternative school. It is the Amelia Street School up in the West End. We also have an alternative school, which was called Richmond Alternative School. Now it's Richmond Success Academy. That was the school that I represented. Those are some of our high flyers, high schoolers. And a lot of people are scared even go into school. I went to the school every week because I wanted to know, why were you in there? Why are you in there? Can I help you? Some of them, just like she said, don't want to go to school. They don't feel that they're learning anything in school. Some of them have done some things that they shouldn't have done. But what Richmond Public Schools needs is more mental health resources. And I'm not talking about just sending somebody in there to say, well, you have mental health. Some of these children have never been diagnosed, even when they were in K through second grade. And they just been passed along, school by school. And when I was in alternative school, because I represent that school, that was the first time that I felt that I needed to do everything I could for those kids. I think because I went to so many funerals, those funerals that you seen on television, those was the ones I attended. I went to so many vigils. And so I said to myself, I have to do something. I have to protect those kids. And that's why I went in there twice a week. I went more to that school than I went to my own kids' school. They never really even seen me at my kids' school. I went to that school because I know that child was going to be a statistic. That's who we saw on Channel 6 and Channel 8. And I get a call at night and said, Miss White, you know that child. And I'm like, I do? And one child hurt me so bad because I just met him the week before. And what happened to him? He was in the trash can. He was found in the trash can that everybody knew in the city of Richmond. But I had just met that child. And so when we said prison the pipeline, that's the school that I had always located myself to. Because those kids, no one wanted to come into the school, and they still don't. Today, they still don't. I still go over there. They still don't. I don't go in as often. Those children have the monitors around their legs. Those children have the probation officers. And we have the same thing for our little babies that's K through 5 that no one knows. And they are proud of it. I went into school and a third grader, he was proud of it to show me his bracelet, home bracelet on his leg. I don't recall when I went to school, we had third graders with home monitors on our. So we have to do something. And I don't want to prolong it, but I'll let you go to your next question.
Oh, yeah. You hit it on the head. As a matter of fact, both of you guys touched on two questions I had down the road, which is about trauma and the other about restorative justice. So right there where you at, if we touch on trauma, what role does trauma actually have in our educational system, and what can realistically be done to help students deal with the trauma as it relates to their education?
So as Ms. White said, one of the things that we really need more of in our schools is mental health support. A lot of our students are experiencing trauma, and because of what they're experiencing in particular in our communities right now. And so one of the things that we do have is, rather than having, for instance, in-school suspension, we have revamped those rooms into what are now called restorative rooms. And so students come in, they are supposed to not necessarily be just like punitive writing lines, for instance, but we have restorative assistants in those rooms where they come in and they're supposed to kind of talk through their feelings and what's happening. We have social workers. We're almost one-to-one, where we have at least one social worker assigned to each school, multiple counselors at each school. However, depending on which school you're in, the level of trauma is so high that these workers who do so much are incredibly overwhelmed. There's just too many students who are emotionally dysregulated, who go home to homes that they don't feel safe in, and then you have the community component of it. And so some of the things that I can give you that my office is starting to work with, we have one of the things that I'm super proud of is previously I operated as the chief of staff for a subset out of the Office of Community Wealth Building under LeVar Stoney, where we offered no strings attached, but universal $500 payments to certain numbers of families. So just to help them get on their feet. And so still connecting to the Office of Community Wealth Building. For instance, one of our schools that had a really high chronic absenteeism number last year. And for those who don't know, chronic absenteeism is when a student misses at least 10% of the school year, which is a significant amount, at least 18 days if they're there from day one to the last day of school. Carver Elementary School had a chronic absenteeism rate last year, my first year in this role, of about 53%. So almost 1 in 2 students at that school were chronically absent. Miss White represents Carver, and she has a great passion for it. My husband and I are residents in the Carver area. Our daughter will attend Carver. That is my deep hope. So I'm really laser focused on supporting this school. But when you look at those students and you see the high need that they have, it makes it very hard for them sometimes to function in class. They're easily distracted. They may have fear. They need one-on-one attention in a way that we just don't have the money for. As Ms. White knows, she's seen our budget, she's administered our budget. And so we want to have more folks into those buildings. It's just very difficult to have it. And so I visit those schools. I visit Richmond High School for the Arts. I visit a lot of our schools where we have our students that are really, they need patience. They need love. They need folks who do not see them as a problem. And so some of the things that we're doing in terms of transforming our restorative rooms, making sure that we have behavioral counselors, not just our school counselors in the buildings, are also things that we're doing. But to be quite honest, the issue is greater than the budget that we're afforded. And we also have, it's very difficult to recruit a lot of people because of the way that education and educators have been demonized. They're not high-paying jobs often, and so it's very difficult to get qualified individuals who are willing to come into these schools once we do have those roles. And so our students, not all of them, but quite a few of them are experiencing a lot of trauma, and that seeps into the classroom. And if you don't have teachers, which we've been doing professional development to make sure that our teachers are aware of how to deal with students, or to support students, not how to deal, how to support students who have these traumatic experiences, until we get to a point where our budget matches the need, we're really just trying to get as extremely creative as possible. Because a student who experiences a traumatic event doesn't just impact them. They impact their teacher, they impact their classmates, they impact their siblings who may be in different grades, who then, it's a ripple effect. And so we can't look at these students in isolation. And there's a lot more that we could be doing, that we want to be doing, but we are trying to be very, very strategic about how we support our students with trauma.
And she said all that. I'm just going to piggyback on some things. What we need is partnerships, and I'm talking about partnerships that look like me and look like you. We have a diverse schools. Yeah, we have a lot of schools in Richmond Public Schools. But most of our white schools, they do have partnerships. They have the PTAs with the 100,000s and 200,000 PTA budgets. And she said Carver, which is the school that I represent. Now, I can walk in there anytime, any day, and I'll get hugs and loves. But I can't stay there 8 hours, because she's right. There are a lot of students who have trauma. And I'm going to give you an example of trauma, because one of the little boys I see all the time, he comes to me and he said, "Hi, Miss White. Hi, Miss White." And he witnessed his grandfather getting shot, getting killed right in the, right beside him. And might as fact, his grandfather passed away in his arms. So what do you do for a child like that? Because you don't want him to miss in his school. Because as Dr. Bell said, we know after so many days and you haven't had that instruction, you're ready to be held back. Because that's what Richmond Public Schools, that's also a part of the state law. Because the state don't see our children, our black children, as having this much trauma. I've had kids at Carver, siblings, 3 or 4, I think it was 3 or 4 of them. They walk in the house, the mom is gone. They step over the dad is gone. You got both parents right in front of you who is deceased. But we expect you to go back to school in a couple of days. Where's the healing for our kids? This is what goes on at Carver. Carver is 99.1% Gilpin Court. This is what goes on. Teachers are substitute. Richmond Public Schools have a lot of substitute teachers. They don't know how to deal with our children like that. We have teachers that don't look like me and you. They don't know how to deal with our children like that. That's why when people ask me, say, Miss White, you're really passionate about those children, because I'm living proof. I've seen all of that. And the children know when you come in. They know when you're genuine. They don't want a whole lot of, like, I'll go over Gilpin Court, and I'll be there for Thanksgiving. They're having a big Thanksgiving at one of the churches over there. They know me when I come in the door. They know when you're genuine. They know when you care about them. They say, well, other people just come in our neighborhood and they just give us food. But I have to say about Trinity, because Pastor, you are here. And I have to say about Trinity, because Trinity Baptist Church has been over Gilpin Court several times with me. Back to school extravaganza, the pros ministry. And the kids know who they are. They know who those ladies are, because they have fed them, they have talked to them, Christmas gifts. These kids know. They got a lot of trauma, and she's right. We don't have the money. When you have one counselor in school and you got 400 children, and half of your children have trauma, that's probably 200 or 300 of them have trauma. What do? Psychiatrists, they're trying to do the test. You don't get but one. And they sharing that psychiatrist from school to school. What do? So I try to stay available, vigilant in all the schools that I've always been in, because I know those kids know me, and if I say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? They're going to tell me the truth. And then I can take it where I need to take it, or I can do what I need to do. And a lot of people don't know this. A lot of our neighbors don't know this. Neighborhoods don't know this. Churches don't know this. Richmond Public Schools, and I ran on this because we are not always equal. Certain sides of this, like I said, certain sides of Broad Street may be treated different. On this side of Broad Street may be treated different. Why? Because those are black children that has trauma. If they were white children that have trauma, we don't get this. We don't get this. And I can tell you we don't get this. The other day, I had someone call me and say, Miss White, over here at this school. Well, it wasn't a black school. It was a white school. But what they told me, I said, I'm not having this. I'm not having this in this school. No, we're not. So communities do have to come together. Partners, we have to have partners. We got to have kids that know, that look at us and know that we feel the same way. We know what they're going through. I know some of our black families say, well, I don't have kids here. I don't have kids at all. I've heard this through my campaign. I don't have to worry about that because my children are grown. That might be true. But if you look at your economy, yes, who's going to take care of the city of Richmond when you're gone? Your children may not even be in Richmond. Who's going to take care of our black children when you're gone? Who's going to help you when there might be an altercation when you're walking across the street? You may be in Carver. Kids don't know you, but somebody might be trying to rob you or something. This kid may save your life. Say, don't do that. That's Dr. Bell. That's we know her. Just like I go to Gilbert Court. I went in and the guy said something to me, and the other guy said, that's Miss White. Miss White, go on in. You ain't got to worry about it. These are things, our families are scared. And I can tell you they're scared. They're really scared now because of the affordable housing. They may be put out in Gilpin Court. But then what does that cause for us as people? We got a whole lot of homeless out here. A lot of homeless children that she is going to have to deal with. Churches is going to have to deal with if Gilpin Court get torn down. There's no affordable houses out here. We know that. If you don't, you need to come along and see. Affordable? What is affordable when it's $185,000 or $200,000? Who can pay for that? If they could pay for that, they wouldn't be in Gilpin Court. They wouldn't be in Wickham Court. So, go ahead.
No. One thing that you guys touched on in that answer, and I brought it to the mayor for some different circumstances, and we could use it in this conversation, which is alternative funding. I know a lot of the work I do in Shockoe Bottom, we end up having to talk about a lot of the same things because it goes back to the communities. And when it goes back to the communities, the police are saying the same thing that the schools are saying. We don't have the budget to deal with this issue. So what I propose to the mayor and would like to hear you guys speak on is, in Baltimore, they looking at this as a issue for the whole community. They don't break it down by school. They don't break it down by policing. They kind of look at it as a community problem, which opens up resources. Do you guys think that there is room for alternative funding in Richmond, where maybe some social work budgets could come to the schools, maybe some of the policing budget could come to the schools that would be able to help the students?
I think that there's definitely room for alternative funding. So one thing that a lot of folks don't know is that the Richmond Education Foundation exists, and so it is a philanthropic arm. It's not connected directly to Richmond Public Schools, but they do a lot of philanthropy and fundraising on behalf of our schools. And that's led by Mr. Tykeem Cooper, and I think under his leadership, we have seen record numbers in terms of what he has been able to raise. However, it does, I don't know all the details around it, but there's definitely room for alternative funding. I think when I think about how we are funded from the city, but also from the state, there was a report that came out that essentially the state of Virginia every year, not just historically, but every year, underfunds public education from $200 million to possibly $4 billion a year. So that is money that my team, particularly Mr. Matthew Stanley, and as our Director of Advocacy and Outreach, we are working very, very diligently to make sure that the state of Virginia properly funds all of the schools. Because when you think about how much $4 billion is that we are being underfunded across the state, that would be an immense influx into the city. One of the things that we are very cautious about is oftentimes when folks give money, It's not free. And it can come with other agendas about how the division, they think the division should be run, our schools should be run, and that's not always in the best interest of our students. And so we have to be very careful when we are bringing in money or asking money or receiving money, because we have to ask who is funding this and for what reason. And so that complicates it just a bit. But we do work with our partners in city council. You know, I'm a long-term resident. I understand that the city council, they work very diligently, but what's important and what a lot of people don't know is our school boards do not generate money. They take the money from the city council, they take the money from the state, but they are not able to generate their own income on behalf of our schools. And so that's also something that, you know, people will say, well, why didn't, you know, such and such district member, is there no funds? Well, they don't fundraise on our behalf, and we have to be very careful about who we take money from and for what reason. So I do think there's always more room for alternate funding, and we have to be very, very diligent about that. And, you know, different schools are doing a lot of things. I know the Kiwanis Club has partnered, for example, with Carver. We do have some schools that have, as Ms. White alluded to, some very, very, and I'll say it, wealthy PTAs, because they are in a part of a city that has been historically segregated, socioeconomically, racially, all of the different tiers. And so another thing that my office is doing is we are very dedicated. In the next 5 years, we are developing, we want diverse, robust, engaged PTAs at every single school across the division. That is a priority of my office under my leadership, and so we've been working on it. We just started our Superintendent's Advisory Council for the year, where we take students from every high school in Richmond, and they're being charged with starting a PTSA, Student Association, at each one of their schools, and that can help them learn not only leadership, but also find those alternative sourcing. We're working with the Council for PTAs, which oversees the city of Richmond, and have been in conversations about how do we help to redistribute some of that wealth. If your PTA has brought in this much money, how can you help the other PTAs that maybe are in more economically disenfranchised areas of the city? And so we are working on it, trying to be very diligent, trying to bring in dollars through the Richmond Education Foundation, doing things where we're telling our story as well. That's the last thing. We have State of Our Schools on October 30th. Please let me know if you'd like to come, where we're going to be talking to major funders. The mayor will be there. I believe, Ms. White, you have an invitation. Folks that make things happen and shake in the city and across the state, to talk about all of the phenomenal things that we're doing in the city. Our SOLs are up for the second year in a row. This year, Richmond Public Schools hit 80% graduation rate. It is the first time we have had an 8 in that tens digit in almost 10 years. Our Black students graduated at a rate of 88%, which is the highest that it has been in almost 18 years. We're doing some work here. We're really concentrating on our all of our students, our Black students especially. Our students with our economically disadvantaged students have also graduated for the highest. John Marshall High School had a 100% graduation rate, which was the first time that this happened in recorded history. And so we did see the benefits of a lot of that extra funding through COVID. And so you can see what's happened through our administration, our school board members like Ms. White holding folks accountable and pushing the note. And so with funding, I say all of that to say there's always room for more funding. We have to be cautious about where it comes from, and we have to make sure that we're spending our dollars appropriately so that we can have the results that we're seeing. And so we're really excited to continue this work. And so if somebody wants to fund something, please come let me know. I'd be happy to take your money.
I agree with everything she said, but I hate to be the downer because everything that she said was true. And when we are collecting money, if I gave a donation to a school, so if in case any of you want to give donation to the school, you have to make sure that it's not over 1,000. It can be $999.99 before they start questioning it. We do have a lot of partners, just like she said, but you have to be really careful with that because they will start controlling your school, especially PTAs and PTOs. And I'm 100% with a PTA, PTO. I ran a PTA by myself, with just two of us. They thought it was the entire PTA, and I worked hard for that. And they want to run it as a business, the double nine, so that's why I'm telling everyone they need a PTO. But I have to agree with her. If you got a school in the second district, and I'm going to use second district because I was second district. If I have a school that don't have a PTA at all with 0 cents, and the parents have to give you money for Halloween or whatever, and you got a school over here that has 300,000, why can't they share? They're in the same district. We got one common goal, and that's student achievement. But that's not how it happens there. That's not how it happens. And she's right, SOLs, they maxed out this year. They did. But parents need to know, we now have new SOL standards. Our children had to get 400, and we worked hard for that, for them to get 400. We got kids that are not reading on grade level. That's why the Kiwanis is partnership with Carver. Carver's doing well now in K through second. We got kindergartens that can write a whole paragraph and can read. But you got to still concentrate on that 4th grade and 5th grade because they got to go to middle school. And anywhere that we need partnerships, we need it in our middle school. We got to have that middle school so they'll be able to go to high school. So in the thing that we got to look at, alternative funding, yes, we do need alternative funding, but we need to know how it's going to be placed, processed, and planned. We got kids that need jobs. They only gave them so much money to just hire a couple children. This is what kids want every day. They want to work. They want to be busy. But if you go to one of the housing developments projects, you'll see them walking around, just walking around. They don't have anything to do. What do they supposed to do? They need jobs. We need to build them up on their resumes, how to write a resume, how to do an interview, mock interviews. These are the things that here in our partnerships in the city, these are simple things that we can do. Now, in the SOL, we need tutors. And I think they may have heard that the other night because I did go down there to the school board. We need tutors in high school. If we're going to change our SOLs from 400 to 445 to 400 to 470, how are we going to get there? Y'all remember this. Our black children, not white children. Our white children is always up in our percentage when we start talking in RPS. Dr. Bell know that. I don't want to call out because she still works for Richmond Public Schools. But she does know that. Our black students is way down here. But every year our white students is way up here. They go to the same school. Now, for me, it's a little hard to believe that every white student is on track and all our black students is down here. And we got so many. But now you're going to move, the state is going to move their SOLs from 400 to 440 something. How are we going to get them there? And then some 470. How are we going to get those students there? They keep telling me, Miss White, it's going to be all right. Miss White is saying, no, it's not. It may not affect them this year, but when my baby get into the high school next year, it will affect. 400 to 4 something. Isn't that a big gap? 400 to 470. And now it's time for Miss White as the Crusaders for Education chair to get the parents to notice this. Because our kids have been struggling with just 380, 390, trying to get them in that 10 points lead so they can retake the test over. But at 440, 470, what a big gap. So what we're going to do here, Richmond, what we're going to do, we do need extra money. Yes, for everything in Richmond Public Schools. And I think that we need to share that responsibility in those schools that have 200 and 300,000 in PTA. I'm not going to change that. We don't have PTOs. We don't even have parents that wants to come and even join the PTA. I'm in 3 PTAs. 1 with my children and 2, I don't have any children, but I'm going to represent that. Because if they need something, I'm going to be available. Whether it's Valentine's, whether it's Christmas, I'm going to be available. And with partnerships concerned black men with Gilpin, they used to live in Gilpin Court. Every last man used to live in Gilpin Court. They are successful now, and they're giving back. They came to me when I was on the board. What can we do? We had one school, Carver, that just needed earphones. They brought the earphones for them. And since now, they've been going in Gilpin Court, giving back to where they live. How many other people do that? Where they have lived, and half of Richmond, I know Trinity used to be Richmond, now we got Henrico and Chesterfield, most of our members. But the ones in Richmond, how many of you do I see in school gonna give back? Don't tell me that you're scared of our kids, because those are the same kids you see in the street, you talk to. But we got to do better. And the mayor needs to know, and I'm going to make this nice, the mayor needs to know what we're going through in Richmond Public Schools. I know he has a crisis with the water. He has the crisis with collective bargaining there. But our kids here in Richmond Public Schools, they need help. They're going through a lot of trauma. So when you see something on television, or you see, it's because these children, they've never been tested. I was on the hearing. These things started when they were young. Now they're in high school, and they're doing some things that you just won't believe. So what we're looking at, based on your thing today, prison to pipeline, somewhere we got to stop it, because that's where they're headed. Prison. Pipeline is the alternative schools. And we have 2 in Richmond. We call it the baby alternative schools, which you shouldn't have any of your babies there. And you have a high school that someone just overlooked them, never did anything for them while they were in middle school. Because it just didn't happen in high school. It happened in middle school. And kids are disrespectful. Some teachers are. Kids don't mind calling you out your name. They really don't. They don't mind hitting you. They don't mind doing any of these things. But we want to put them right back in, because we don't want to make sure that we don't have chronic absency. We're not giving them the help, but we worried about chronic absency, because chronic absences deal with accreditation. Everybody is concerned about accreditation in Richmond. And they'll put it up. Oh, Richmond, they weren't accredited this year. Henrico was, Chesterfield was. But look, they don't have the trauma there. They don't have the same children. Now, Henrico may be getting some of these children, because that's where they rezoning them. When you redo a lot of the housing projects, they give them a voucher to move out. And they're moving out to the Henrico. They may be moving out to the Chesterfield. So they're going to have some of the same children. But what are they going to do in Henrico and Chesterfield? We already know what they're going to do. They're going to put them out permanently. And they're going to look just like me and you. But Richmond, we're trying to save our children, but are we really trying to save them? We don't have enough to come and help. I need help to help me. They need help to help them. And all of these organizations that we have, I know we have NAWCP, we have Crusades for Christ, we have a whole lot of organizations. But the families need help. Just not, oh, I'm going to give you some clothes, I'm going to give you some food. Come in, bring the children in to Trinity. Bring them in. I'm here. I think I know them, half of them. Bring them in. I don't mind. I've been to Gibbon Court and I've seen a church bus out there on Saturdays. They gave them hot dogs. They looked like me and you, but they were an African church. And they had their bus out there to take the children to church. Our children don't know about church. They don't. I'm just going to tell you. They don't know about church. They don't know about getting up in the morning to come to church. It has to be an incentive to even bring them to church. To even go to that van that they had to give them something. And I'm a firm believer, if you go to church a couple times, you'll come back to church. So we need to, here at Trinity, we need to establish something to bring them back to church. Because like I said, I was 13 here. Somebody brought me here, and a whole bunch of girls, we came. And I always will believe what my grandma Sarah say, once you bring your child to church, they will always come back to church.
Amen. Amen. So, real quickly, because we approaching an hour. When we talk about alternative funding or any type of funding, I think that everyone needs to be aware a lot of educational funding comes from real estate taxes. So when we look at the disparities between black and white schools, it starts in the black and white communities and property taxes. So when we go to advocate for things, keep that in mind, all right, that a large part of education comes from that. But real quick, I want to touch on summing up so that we have a call to action to move forward. And based off conversation, I'm hearing the concerns are communication, using restorative things instead of punishment, addressing mental health, and more funding. In a minute or less, do you guys see anything else that we need to focus on to help rebuild trust in our schools?
In a minute or less, well, I agree with Ms. White. There's definitely room for bringing our children back into church. I mean, I was baptized at Trinity. I was a youth usher here. I brought my daughter back into Trinity, and so I think that is really important. But beyond that, when we're really thinking about how do we engage our families, we just have to make sure that we are advocating and loudly. And so my office goes to the General Assembly, and we lobby a lot of our representatives. And so if anybody ever wants to, I'd be happy to plan it with Trinity, want to come and lobby, have some of those high talking points so that our legislators know how dire it is. I'm more than happy to set up a day or multiple days if you'd like to come along for you to come and lobby our folks that hold the purse strings, who make the policies, who decide how much funding we have and that decide how many psychiatrists we have or nurses that we have. That's a big part of the work that we do, but we just have to be loud. And when folks see that we're being loud on their behalf and genuinely, honestly care about their issues, that's how we build trust, because they know that we care about them and we're advocating for them. We're doing more than listening, and so we have to advocate and we have to lobby. So please come see me if that's something you want to be a part of.
I'm going to do this in a minute. What we need to do is advocate, and she's correct. But what we need to do we need to do it in numbers. We need to go to the city hall. That's where all the money is. We need to do it, and we have 9 representatives in the city hall, 1 for each district. They need to know that we stand for something, and that's our children. We don't do that. We let them make whatever decision they want to make for that district. And you are right. The personal property tax, I pay personal property tax. We got to make sure that we're doing it equally. Just because you pay the same, you may be white, I'm black, we pay the same personal property tax. That doesn't mean that your school get funded over there any more than over here. And you're in the same district, and you're in Richmond Public Schools. We got to stop that division. We got to come and be equal for all. I pay the same taxes, so there is no different. But when we advocate, we need to do it in numbers. We need to come down there. We need to decide what we're coming for and what our children need in Richmond Public Schools. Not just, oh, we're going to go to the state. I do that every year, too. I do that in January. I do that for the veterans, and I do it for the federal. But we need, when our children, they know when they see me, she's going to say about children. Yes, I'm always going to say about children because I stand for children, but we need to do it in numbers. When we come, go to the City Hall on Monday, because it's on Monday, and we need to speak as a group. The same way when you go to City Hall, you see it filled up. Whole City Hall filled up. They don't look like me, but they filled up. And they have their own agenda. Our agenda should be our Richmond Public School students. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Quickly, does anyone in the audience have any questions? Any questions, Pastor First Lady? Any comments? Questions? You don't come into a man's house and don't allow for him to speak. All right.
Thank you all so much for coming out. But I do have a few questions because I come from a family of educators. I have my mom, my father, my husband was in the public school system, and my niece, and the list goes on with education. And she was, Dr. Bell was spot dead on. The salary is not that high. And the expectation for our teachers, they can't do it all. What we really need to advocate for is to, it needs to start from home. And I do know that a lot of people are struggling, and the kids, like you said, there's trauma there. But at the end of the day, when does it end? It's always going to be a black and a white, right? So I come from Alexandria, Virginia. Of course, it's all predominantly white, okay? So I didn't go through that experience with trauma, but when I moved here to Richmond, I do stay close in contact with our students. Education is a key. But I really want to know, you all said funding, because I'm always on a PTA, PTO, and all of that, and paid into it. What percentage of our taxes actually go to the school system?
So I don't know the exact percentage because it varies from year to year based off of how the city council allocates those funds. But when we talk about our property tax, for example, when we think about that this year there's going to be a freeze in the cost of property tax. And so that means no increased funding for the city. Mayor Avula has already said that, which means he has already communicated to Richmond Public Schools that next year there will be no increase in the amount that we are going to be allocated. So what that means is, regardless of the percentage that it happens, we're not actually going to get any new funding from City Council this year. So as Ms. White alluded to, the cutoff scores for our SOLs have gone up. The demands have gone up. Unfortunately, the money that we will have to address those increased demands won't go up. I don't know the exact percentage, but maybe Ms. White does.
Now, she's actually correct. Well, I can't tell you exactly what's the percentages because the city council handles that. But I can also, I want to just focus on something that you had said. Richmond Public Schools teachers are one of the highest paid. Now, most of the money that's in the budget, we were the first to have collective bargaining. So they're in the midst now of trying to decide what is going to happen in collective bargaining, which you probably have seen on the television. So if you put it in a pie shape, most of the money is collective bargaining and the staff and support salaries. So you don't see very much money going to our students. So that's why I have a problem because most of the money is for our staff and our teachers. And Richmond Public Schools is one of the highest paid for our teachers. And we have most Henrico residents are now coming to teach for Richmond Public Schools. If you're not getting the same money in Henrico and Petersburg, you go where the money is, which is Richmond Public Schools. Richmond Public Schools is trying to maintain that because the prior years they had almost every classroom had substitute teachers. I had one school that had nothing but substitute teachers. So you tell me, what were those students learning? That's what I had to advocate on. Why do my school have all substitute teachers when we already know this school is one of the lowest in your SOL testing and one of the most problematic schools in Richmond? So if you didn't have anyone like me on the board, it'd just fly on by. But I am watching, very much watching, even though I'm not on the board. I'm very much watching. Like I said before, I will always be watching because that experience that I had on the board gave me what I needed to see and what I need to know and now what I need to do. But most of the money, and she's right, you have to go to city council because say if I said we need 9.6 million and we don't get 9.6 million, we only get 6 million because our budget has to go to city council, and city council decides what the school should get. They say, well, you're only going to get but 7 million. Well, where's the other 2 million going to come from? So then what happens is it's a day down City Hall, and you see everybody in City Hall asking for that $2 million. And then you see residents being threatened, oh, your taxes is getting ready to go up. Or you had you had the food taxes. All of that plays a big thing. And I know you're going to come with me with the lottery. Yeah. People always ask about the lottery, so I know you're going to come to me about that because I asked that same thing when I was on the board. That's divided into divisions. Henrico got to get some, Chesterfield got to get some, Fairfax, everybody got to get a bit of that pie. And that goes to certain programs, although we have Title I for each one of our children.
Right, I was about to ask about that, the partnership, and then we hear about funding going different, into the school systems, but we always are short. So, it's just a need. I mean, you all are spot dead on. We have to do something to protect our children, that are behind us and our children's children going forward. But you all did a wonderful job. It's always in the back of my mind. Money is there. Is it being allocated correctly amongst, the Richmond Public Schools, Henrico, Chesterfield?
It's not.
It's not.
But that's why I made the statement that I made. I want people to keep in mind. Property taxes funds majority of, I'm not going to say majority because we don't know exact percentages, but a lot of education. But it's returned to the district in which it was paid. That's what creates the problem for our schools.
So I know we're trying to close out, but one thing that I wanted to acknowledge that we're advocating on a lot is people always wonder, well, the city of Richmond is the city of Richmond. Why do we have less money than Henrico, Chesterfield, et cetera? Not only is there a wealth income disparity depending on where you're looking, but the city of Richmond has so much state property that goes untaxed. between VCU, between the Capitol government, all of those government properties. They are operating within our limits, and they pay nothing towards taxes, and that's not money that we can ever recoup. Whereas in Henrico and Chesterfield, they do not have as much state property. And so what happens is people purchase those properties, businesses sit on those properties, and then they pay taxes back into that system. We have a very large gap in the city of Richmond because of all of the untaxed property that sits in here by merit of us being the capital city. And so that creates a huge funding gap between ourselves and our neighboring divisions.
And I would like to say, and then I know it's finished, she's right on that, but we also, when we advocate, we need to look at the local compositive index. That has been a big thing, and I've been advocating that for a long time, I think 12 years. And they promised me, they said, well, when it gets to 7 years, we're going to look into it. We haven't seen our state legislators look into it yet. And the money is saying, what it's really saying, and I'm just going to do a little bit, what it's really saying is that Richmond, Virginia, we are the most wealthiest when we're not. They haven't looked at the local composite since 1973. And they got Fairfax, as the poorest. And we know that's not true. So someone needs to convert that, it's a formula, so that we can get the money that we deserve. Now, our special need students, they receive the money, but we need to make sure that they are getting the service. These are the things that we need to look at in Richmond Public Schools. We need to ensure that they're getting the service. We pay a lot of money out, and you may say, I'm going to give the student 30 minutes or 20 minutes. Do they really receive that service? And that's what I'm looking into right now, and the people on my committee, because I need to make sure that the special needs students are receiving the service if their parents are doing IEPs and 405s on. I need to make sure that is happening, because Richmond Public Schools have a large number of students on individual plans here, evaluation plans, we do. And we get money for that. But are the children really getting the services? Are they getting the one-on-ones, sitting with them in the classroom? So that's it. Thank you.
All right. Vanessa, did you need to say anything or just the announcement about the second? That's all? Yeah. All right, so I thank everybody for coming out tonight. First, we give a round of applause for our panelists. We're very grateful for the knowledge and the insight, because this is a very important conversation. Now, we need everybody to buckle up for the November Crucial Conversations. On November the 2nd, the SCLC is having a march from MLK, was it middle school, to the bell tower at the Capitol. It's the last weekend before election. So we are gathering people. What we're going to do, we're going to have a crucial conversation that Sunday. That crucial conversation is going to be a very important conversation. And then we're going to go down and march with our people. Because we can't keep talking and not take action. Crucial conversations is great. Taking action is the only way that we're going to do something. So on that day, we're going to have crucial conversations, and then we're going to go march, all right? Now, on that crucial conversations, tell your people, the topic is Martin Luther King's unfulfilled dream of economic justice. Because if we don't take control of our economy, we keep begging, and people don't like when we say that word, but I'm using it because I want to incite some action. We have to keep begging people who have for 400 years showed us they don't care about us to treat us better. And the only way that we can take any control is through economic justice. And that was what Dr. King was working on when he was assassinated. And that's something that we need to put our focus back on. So on November 2nd, Martin Luther King's unfulfilled dream, and then, just like Dr. King, we're going to go march. All right, so I'll see y'all next month. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you for coming, especially to the last minute.